Welcome back to True Story with John Gibson. Today is a very special guest. First and foremost, it's season debut, season 7, and we really couldn't have had a better person. Really, to me, in my opinion, Mandy Schneider is the definition of resilience. I'm so thrilled to have her on the show today and learn a little bit more about her life story. With that, Mandy, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm really glad to be here in season 7. So it's a big start. So I'm excited for that.
I can't believe we made it this far. Yes. But again, I'm so thrilled to have you. I couldn't imagine truly a better person to start.
Oh, thank you.
Really, I'm really honored to have you. So again, thank you. With that, a big part of the audience probably knows who you are already, but for those who don't, you are you're many things, of course, but one of those things is a really successful BJJ competitor, and I'm particularly interested in learning more. I've seen your success over the last year, how you've been thriving in competition, but I'd love to learn a little bit about your journey, how it started, and then obviously what led you to competing and stuff.
So it's been a while. I started when I was about 13. I almost was 14.
Okay.
And I'm 18 now, so it's been a couple years I've been doing it. I started at a gym really local to me. I still train there sometimes too as well. And I started, it was my dad's the one who got me into it, actually.
Oh, cool. Really?
Classic dad move.
Yeah, my daughter just turned 13. This is
cool. Well, perfect. Time to go.
Yeah.
But he just made a joke about when we were watching a movie about how this one fight scene had a lot of jiu-jitsu in it, and I was just like, I don't know what that is, and he was like, you should do it, and I said okay. And so I tried it because I was not doing much at the time, athletic wise. I always grew up pretty athletic. I grew up in volleyball and gymnastics. And then I took a break from some it for a while, so I was looking for a sport, and then I tried it, and I just remember falling in love with it since day one, my first class. I loved it.
Wow. Did you know you wanted to compete pretty early? Because you had the success at blue belt. I mean, I don't know about your white belt. I'd love to hear about that. But at blue belt, you were on the map already. Were you being really successful in IBJJF? And obviously now purple belt, of course, that's continued. But did you know pretty quickly you wanted to compete?
I knew pretty quickly I probably didn't want to compete, and then I probably couldn't compete, actually. Okay. When I started jiu-jitsu, I was not the most confident person. I'm still not the most confident, but when I started, I was a 13, 14-year-old girl. I just was not a confident person myself, And I remember at white belt, I never competed at white belt, actually. I did compete. I actually got my green belt. It was really funny. They put me from white.
Yeah, that makes sense. Green. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, no, I mean, most people don't. But they put me from white and they just put me straight to green. My first tournament was a local American Grappling Federation, what they call it.
I agree.
Yeah, and that was good. I did gi and no gi, and I had never envisioned myself competing. And I don't know, I guess I saw other people doing it in my gym, and so I was like, okay, I'll try it. And I tried it, and it was great. I won both the divisions. I moved up in weight, so it was good. I got to fight another competitor, someone I don't train with in the gym, right? And I didn't expect myself to win, but I won both my gi and no gi bracket, and so I was like, oh, okay, maybe I can do it. I did break my wrist my first tournament though, so that is quite memorable.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
Yeah.
And your story is such a little adversity throughout it.
It's
and well, so much of that is surprising to learn because I mean, really, I guess in the grand scheme of things, you've been training overall 5 years, right?
Almost, yeah, I'd
maybe
say
5, 6, even
4.5. I think.
Yeah, even that. You've been really successful. Honestly, in that time, you've been busy. You've done a lot of competitions. So, wow, what a testament to you. Had to be somewhat of a natural. You had to be.
I don't think anyone's.
Well, that's fair, right?
Natural, but I mean, I think I just enjoyed it so much, and I think when you love something and enjoy something, you're gonna want to put a lot of work into it, and so that's how I see it. I'm not a natural or anything like that. like even when people say like, oh, you've been successful, I'm like, oh, I don't know. Like there's still a lot of things that I haven't done or haven't won yet. And I'm still trying to do, but I know I love it. And so it's like, that's how my theory is. Like, if you love it and it's a passion, you're going to put in the work to do it,
Absolutely.
But yeah, so it was like, that was kind of my journey. I competed a little bit at green, not so much. I did like an Austin Open, I got second. I did American Nationals at green, I got third. And then like my first year as blue belt was like my juvenile year, because of COVID, I didn't compete. And so, I mean, that was about it. But yeah, that's just kind of my story, was just like competing wise. Now I'm a purple belt, so it's a very new challenge, but I like it. So just gonna do my best.
No, I love it. So, well, you touched on something there too that I think is pretty great, and hopefully a lot of people, it resonates with them too. Like maybe it's not about the competitions. That may not be the primary thing. You love it. You have a passion for it regardless. Yeah. That totally makes sense. It's so encouraging to me because some of like the healthiest relationship, definitely not even some, 100% the healthiest relationships I've ever like fostered with like women or females have been as an adult and through jiu-jitsu. Like it's just a safe place for me. And like, there's just, I don't know, like we're just trying to get better. And it's just, I've really made good friends that way. So I love, like, I want to encourage so many young women in particular, any woman, but anyone, to try jiu-jitsu. Like, don't
me too. Yeah, it is.
So you're so important. Like, I think your message is so important.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what I always want to try and get across, especially to like younger women, younger girls, because that's like, I was that younger girl who was like, I was not a confident girl. I didn't ever think I could compete at world championships. Like I remember being a green belt and I remember seeing like all these people competing at like the worlds, and being like, when I just started like really watching jiu-jitsu, like getting into it. Right. And I was like, oh, we actually have to be like decent to get there. And then like I've competed at 2 worlds. I did one as juvenile and one as adult. And so I was like, now I'm like, wow.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and you need to give yourself more credit. Pan Am's and other, you've been really active, honestly, at a high level.
Last year was my most active. So I'm enjoying it. It's good.
It's awesome. It's great. Well, let me kind of take a step and maybe transition a little bit too, and kind of explain high level for both of us. Maybe, this is our first time like formally meeting, right?
Yeah.
But also to the audience as to how I became familiar with you. I became conscious of who you were. It was literally like about a year ago. It was last August, and I follow Mo. Is it Jassem with ADCC? Jessam?
Yes, I think that's how you say his last name.
Yeah, Mo, and he was sharing on social media. He was and obviously he's someone that's very, very influential in BJJ and in this sphere, right, in our world. And he was very vocal, advocating for you and your story. And he was sharing an article that was published in Jiu-Jitsu Times, which I can link here for everybody to reference for themselves. But it just introduced me to you and your story, unfortunately, in like not the greatest of circumstances, Yeah. It's not how I would have liked to have met you, or I've learned about your story, but you're so important. I'm like so grateful you shared it. You're so brave. You and I share, and I'm going to shut up very soon, I promise.
No, you're fine. I like this.
But you and I share so many similarities in so many ways.
Yeah, we do.
Just from our past and having been touched by certain things, and this being one of them. So in that reason alone, I've rooted for you. I've really been invested in your, not just competitive success, your life success, anyway, so, with that, I want to give you the space to, and to share your story as you feel comfortable. And I kind of want to yield to you, but do you mind sharing a little bit about, I guess, your experience with your coach and yeah, thanks.
yeah, for sure. Well, thank you for saying all the things too, but
yeah, you're amazing, Mandy. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. So are you. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it was kind of crazy because like I said previously, I got my blue belt on my 16th birthday from my coach. His name was Rodrigo, and he was came from the Fight Sports gym, but I don't live in Miami. I don't live in Florida. I've never been to the Fight Sports gym. He just came from there. So everyone always asks me about that. I'm like, I've never been to that gym. I don't
No,
know.
it's interesting because the other coaches that got involved in this thing really, it revealed and not to interrupt you, but there was a systemic issue. There was a big issue with this guy coaching. He shouldn't have been now. And
exactly, yeah. It's like, but I know great people from that gym too, and
of course,
it is what it is,
That's
but
anyway, so fair. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, it's like I know great people from that gym still too. But it is what it is sometimes. But anyways, I was 16. I'd known him since I was 15, since I was a green belt actually. And at that time they were transitioning between another coach from Fight Sports who had to leave. And so he was taking his place. And so we had known each other for a while. And once I got my blue belt, there's another gym that's my team now called Soul Fighters. And we would always drive there because I couldn't drive yet. And so he would always pick me up to go and train.
Right.
And, it sounds normal. It's like if I was a male student, people wouldn't think it was weird. So in my mind,
not at all.
Okay, no. It's not weird. And
so much of your story, it sounds like grooming. Like there was predator and prey. Like it's so unfair. Yeah. Like, sorry. Yeah.
No, it is. It's so weird because it's like I would just look back now and I was like, oh my God, I did not recognize it. And so many other people didn't recognize it. But it's grooming, and it's a thing that people aren't aware of quite yet sometimes.
Right.
But so it's like we had a close relationship. And it was nothing like out of the ordinary. It was just like a coach and student, he acted like that with a lot of other students. And, so it was kind of like, to me, nothing out of the ordinary. But like my first fight at blue belt wasn't until that super fight that I went to in Houston. And so that was my first time competing with my blue belt at all. Like I'd never competed. I hadn't competed in a while. So I was already very nervous and it was like a good opportunity. And I just remember like the first thing when I showed them like, hey, like they want me to have this fight in Houston. I just remember the first thing I'm saying was like, okay, I'll drive you. And I was just kind of like, oh.
You shouldn't laugh.
Yeah, I was like, no, it's kind of like, that's the first thing that comes to your mind, bro.
But you're a kid, and to you, you're like, yes, I got to ride. Yes, I got to coach. Like, it's a wonderful cause, big opportunity. Like, you're so excited. Yeah.
Yeah, and to me at the point, I was like, I don't care who takes me. I just want to have my coach there. And of course, like, things fell apart like last minute. Like, it's like my dad was supposed to be there. And I invited a bunch of people from my gym, and it was like literally like everything just like fell apart. And so everything just kind of like fell into his game because there was like things behind the scene that like, I thought he was going to bring like his wife. I thought like all this stuff. And then it was like last minute things just kind of like, oh, it's just you and him, but separate rooms. And I was just kind of like, okay, whatever. I just want to go compete and then come home.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah. And so that was like the night, that everything happened, he did like, that was the night, like before my fight, like everything was normal. I did my weigh-ins, we ate and then went home, not home to the hotel. It's like, and that's when it happened, like the assault and stuff like that. And, that part, like in the jiu-jitsu times, I shared all the same information. But, I never shared like the actual details of like what happened and something like that. I don't think that stuff's important. I just think it's important for people to know, like it happened. It's still very hard for me to say like,
no, of course.
Like, like
be explicit. No.
Yeah, no, I'm never gonna be explicit with things, but I always just want to like, it's just a touchy subject. Even like I have a hard time saying that I was like raped by somebody. And like, so I always say like I was sexually abused by somebody, because in the state of Texas at 16, any like kind of assault is like sexual abuse to it. So I just use a legal definition. It's easier. Yeah. But
one thing, not to interrupt you, but I really think was that you touched on in that article that I didn't. There were two things I didn't consider about your story that I think it's so brave of you just to share any of it, but you really were very transparent and open about how you struggled internally with exactly with what you're talking about, with like, was this consent? Was I wrong? Did I do something? You were blaming yourself. You were going, am I at fault here? And it's so important for you to share. I hate that you struggled with that. Like, it pains me. It hurt me because I identified, but it pained me. But for anybody else who's been through that, that's what keeps people quiet. Like, that's the thing. So you address that. And I was like, oh my God, hero. So important. So important to judge, because that's the element, like, that's why people feel shame or whatever. And it's, they're victims. You're not wrong.
Yeah.
In your story in particular, you were a minor. You were a minor. This is a coach. This is a grown-up, a mentor. But he also had alcohol, and he got you intoxicated.
Yeah.
Like, you were not in any way in the wrong. You were a victim, but like, you were at a severe disadvantage. You know, you were out of your elements. You were far from home by yourself, nervous about a fight. Like, he was the only person you had to lean on. Like, I don't know. You were very much taken advantage of. Anyway.
It took me a while to realize that too. You're right. I think it was just, the biggest part was it that I told myself too. I think I mentioned in the article too. It's just like, when something like that happens to you, at least for me, because I still knew, like, okay, well, I have to go and fight tomorrow. So in like my mind, it's like, if I just deny like things alone, then it'll be fine, So I just like denying everything, like nothing, like I'm fine. Like it was easy for me to blame myself.
You were on people, but you had to. It's survival mode. You had to go into denial just because you had a huge, formidable task at your hand. Like jiu-jitsu is scary enough. Someone can heel hook you and blow your knee or worse. Like it's scary enough. You got to move weight, these things. But also you detailed it in the article. Mandy, you're a hero. You had to ride home with this monster. You were trapped for 4 or more hours. So like, wherever you had to go mentally to protect yourself is okay. Forgive yourself. Yeah. You were trapped. Like, yeah.
And that's the thing too. It's like, I want to get across to other people too. It's like, I had remember when I first shared, people said a bunch of things like, oh, you should, like, why don't you do this? Why don't you do this? And that's why I tell people now, it's like, listen, like, when you're in that kind of situation, like, this goes for any woman, man who's been in that kind of situation. It's like, your brain's you're just gonna go into survival mode, like you said. Like, you're gonna do anything you can to survive. Like, there's things like, of course I wish I should have done, but in my mind it was just kind of like a get through it. It is what it is. And you still are like fully aware of what happened. Like, it was so strange too, because I try to talk about it more. It's like, my mind was not fully aware of what happened. Like, my mind was like not there, but like my body knew. I just remember because we had to check out of the hotel before like my fight, so we didn't have anywhere to go. So we went and walked around like this park or museum or something like that before the fight. And I just remember anytime I get close to, like, I physically felt sick, like for like like my body physically would like tremble. And I remember like if I turned around and he wasn't there, I'd freak out and I'd think like he abandoned me and that he's gonna go and just like he left me here or something, or like, I was just freaking out because I'm just like, I
understand all of it.
It was a difficult time, but that's the biggest thing is like that people don't understand is like when something like that happens to you, most of the times you just don't know what to do. And you're also just, there's a lot of fear installed because it's like who's gonna believe,
all of your security is just altered. It's shattered. Like, you're basically like, what you thought you knew is now different, and it's very insecure. You just feel, and even that false attachment in that moment with this person that just took total advantage of you, and or I know or whatever, you have these unsure feelings. You're on an island. You're by yourself in the city you've never been. Like, you're totally like. You had no one else. And again, you're survival mode. And it's just, to me, all of this is understandable to people who've been through trauma or trauma informed. Absolutely understand how you may have to dissociate. It's a survival mechanism. And there's no fault in that, that this is something. And you in particular, you were a child. You were a little, like, I think I have a 13-year-old daughter, like I mentioned, like, this is every parent's, this is everyone's nightmare. Like, you're a kiddo. Like, I think about now, I'm 39. I'm like, I was such an idiot at 25. I thought I was such a man. And at 35, I was like, I'm such a man. I'm like still figuring it out, Like, you had no hope. Like, you really were at a disadvantage. And you're so brave for sharing it and detailing even those things about how it was foggy with I understand that too. And you mentioned in the article how maybe that's a blessing you know, how you don't remember something. And
Yeah.
I teared up. I got like chills. I was like, I get that too.
Yeah. I mean,
You know?
it's for the most part, I remember things. There's only like some things I don't quite remember, but you know, that's why I said like in the article, it's like, you know, it's because like those are things like you don't want to remember. So in a way, it's kind of like, well, if I had, you know, at least it was kind of sucky because it's like, yeah, and I did realize eventually, like after a lot of like processing stuff like that, I was like, I did like the alcohol did numb me a lot and stuff in that way. So it's kind of like I was just remember it's so depressing to think like having
no, I know. And
I mean, it's like, you know,
it's a blessing in disguise in a weird way.
Yeah. You know, it's like in those situations you just gotta, you know. But that was just one thing. It was just the dealing with that aftermath, especially, and then I have to having to. I think the hardest thing, one of the hardest things I had done was having to just like go and compete the next day.
I can't imagine that.
Yeah, because it's like mentally, I wasn't there at all.
Right.
But I also knew like I have to be like normal because the whole time I was very anxious about setting off like an alarm almost to him, because my fear was that like if I said something, if I did something wrong, then he got kind of scared that I was gonna like try and say something or do something, that he was just gonna like leave me or like hurt me again or do something like that, you know?
Yeah.
So it's hard.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think, you know, so it's kind of a sense where it's kind of like I had to protect myself by not saying anything to him or going to get myself help, because
you had to get home safely.
Yeah, I was like, I just have to get home, you know?
Yes.
And that was definitely I don't know how I went for the next day. I just think I just told myself kind of like, I love jiu-jitsu. It's not the situation I want to be in, but you know, I'm not gonna back out. I'm already here. I already went through enough to fight. And so I did, and you know, like physically, like I always told people, it was like I wasn't in pain. Like I was like physically in pain. You know, it's not something you want to do. Like I was still physically in some pain, but and mentally just wasn't there. But you know, it was just like, and that was probably just so one of the hardest things that I tried to do was just to go out there and fight. And then also I mentioned in the article too, it's like I went out there and fought, but I also knew like I couldn't win because I was afraid of like him taking advantage of like any kind of like celebration. So
I
understood
like, that too.
It was like
want to trigger a high or low.
Yeah,
I understand it. Like, yeah, please go on, explain that feeling.
Yeah, because it's like, you know, it's like in that moment, I didn't think about it until like, before I got on the stage. Like it was like, I was like, oh, I don't think I can win, but like I can't lose. And so that was definitely one of the hardest things to do, was try to just go out there and survive like again. Because I survived the last night, and then I went out there and I told myself, guys, I have to survive one more time and then I'm done and I can go home. And so, I mean, that was that. Like, I just remember the only time I felt like safe that whole trip was when I was actually like on the stage, because it still makes me emotional to talk about, but it's like you're standing there on the stage. But I also knew like I had my whole family like watching me at home. And I just like felt them like watching me, and I just felt them like looking at me almost in a sense, because I knew it's like, I know they're watching me right now. I know they are, and they were, and I just like felt that. And so it was like I felt like, so you know, that was like the one moment of peace I had. And then like, you know, after that was, you know, insane. But so that was just kind of, you know, the main story of it. And you know, of course, like I touched a lot more in details on stuff like that in the article.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank
you.
And I don't want to make you emotional. I'm sorry.
It's good to get like emotional, you know. It's an emotional thing.
It's thank you. It's so much for sharing. It's like, again, this is so brave of you, and someone needs to hear this, will hear this.
Yeah.
You know how that works.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
exactly. So, yeah. And that's kind of like what I really want to talk about, because everyone knows like the assault happened. Everybody knows that. And if they don't, then it's kind of like, well, but what like was crazy is kind of the thing of like how like in the last year I've been doing with it, because I only came public with it, like you said, like a year ago. And it was just, that whole situation was crazy. It changed a lot of things for me. It changed a lot of things in my life, but it definitely was something like I'd never regret, because in the last years when I've really become like the happiest person of myself, because I could just be like, it's open, because I had to hide that. Like even after I came back from Houston, it was, I didn't tell anybody for 2 weeks because of fear. And so, you know, just finally having to be able to like live like freely with that. And also my biggest thing is like, I like to try and help people even before I help myself. It's a bad habit and a good habit sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And so the whole reason I even like shared my own story was because I heard of the similar situation that happened before me, like a few years before me.
Yes.
And I remember like, I was so enraged that I had never found out about this. I was just like enraged that this had happened like before in the same kind of situation, same team. So I was just enraged. And so that's why I shared my story. Because I said, will this help? And they said, yeah. And I said, okay. And my mindset is, you know, I can't change, like nobody can change what happened to them. Like whether it was like, you know, it could be a different situation, but like you can't change your past traumas. You can't change things that happened to you, but also because like mine was connected to my sport, you know, it was my coach who happened before I went to the fight. I just remember thinking, I was like, well, you know, I can't give up right now. And so it's like, I can't let him take anything more from me. And I also knew like, I just can't feel like not wanting to be alive every day. I just can't like feel like this anymore.
Oh, man, God.
And so,
but
you
you're
know,
so beautiful. You empowered yourself. You handled
yeah.
it. I spent 30 years even getting to like, man, and I had this written down as a question. You just touched on that. So like, not to make this in any way about me, but I'm so fascinated by this because again, you mentioned it, but jiu-jitsu helped me slay my demons. Like ultimately, after all the searching, bodybuilding didn't do it, wrestling didn't do it, all the relationships in the world, where like no one slayed my own demons and fears and insecurities till I found jiu-jitsu. It was like totally, and is still, that's my safe place. Yeah. And that's what really is crazy to me about your journey, because as much as I can relate to you in some ways, I cannot relate to going to my safe place and this happening to me. And then you've managed to stay in the community, be positive, and then thrive competitively. Like you're such an amazing example. How did you, and this was the question, because it's like, man, I cannot imagine that. But how did you manage to not let this totally make you cynical or maybe not ever want to do jiu-jitsu again? Like, how did you stay so positive and not let it destroy this beautiful thing?
I'd say the biggest thing that let me stay so positive and so like determined to like fight for myself was a lot of it came with from support of the people around me in the gym. Is like I surrounded myself by a positive gym, by people who would help me. And I just told myself that I can't quit. And I told myself, if I can't change, you know, what happened to me, I can try my best to make sure that it doesn't happen to other people, or I can try and use something bad that happened to me. You know, it's still bad, but I can make it something positive in a sense for other people by like, you know, if someone tells me that like seeing me still here competing, still training had helped them, then in my sense, it helps me, you know, like be positive about it. I don't know how to explain that. I'm explaining kind of.
I imagine that would be healing, but, for sure.
Yeah, I think, you know, jiu-jitsu is what I love. It's my passion, and so I wasn't about to let that get taken away from me.
God, that's awesome.
It wasn't easy to do. It's like only in the last couple months had I really started to get more and more like okay mentally with training, stuff like that. but I think it was my own competitiveness inside me saying like, well, I'm not going to let someone take anything else away from me. And there were times when like, yeah, I was not good, and there was like mentally, and there was times that I wanted to quit. There's things that, you know, I did that were like not the best for myself, but then, you know, I had others to help pick me up, and I just was determined to show others like you can like live still, you can survive still. And I was really determined to show myself that, you know.
Yeah, no, yeah, I've been watching, like, and you're living proof, like, and I mean, you've been so inspiring to me, and of course, so many others, of course. How about that? Like, do you feel like the community has embraced you over the last year?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of crazy when it all first happened.
It was pretty wild, right?
Yeah. But it was definitely not the reaction I expected, you know, especially given the kind of situation of it. I wasn't expecting a lot of the support that I did. And it's crazy because even now I try to realize how much support I have, because I'm like, there's a lot, and I'm always like eternally grateful. And I also didn't feel like, you know, part of me was just like, I don't know if I deserve any of the support. I don't know if I deserve it.
Of course you do, yes.
Yeah, you know, but now
yes.
I've you know, processed it. It was just a lot at the time.
Right, of course.
But the community definitely did. Like I didn't expect the, you know, kind of wave that happened from it. You know, Mo was a very influential person though, so he helped a lot with that. Him and Avery with the jiu-jitsu times, you know. And then like the New York Times, like that was insane. Like Mo is a very influential person, so he helped a lot with that.
Yeah.
But they definitely did. And so, you know, of course there's people who didn't, but I don't care. Like that's one thing about me. I do my best to not focus on a negative, because I have so much like positivity now. It's like I feel like, sure, there's some people who, and there are some things you would say like nasty things. They would, you know, all kinds of things. But then I was just like, you know what? Like sometimes it bothers me, but then I'm also like, you know what? I have so much positive to it, and I can help others with it. So I'm like, you know what, say what you want about me, you know, but it's like, I know I'm trying to do the right thing, you know. That was my whole thing with the story, is I knew like there was fear, you know, from the negative backlash, but I knew my intention was good, because my intention was not to bring down a team. My intention was not to bring down like anyone else, and my intentions weren't like evil and malicious.
Not at all. And it wasn't written that way. It wasn't presented. And I mean, so much of it, your message that resonated with me was your own struggle with yourself with it. I mean, you had to share XYZ happened, kind of high level, but it was more like, you know, the doubt and all the things that went through that. And then you had to compete. It's like crazy. You're like, it's so, no, look, it was so brave, and it's so mature. All of this is so mature. Like, it's really, I mean, you mentioned your jiu-jitsu community and stuff. I imagine your parents and your loved ones too. It's still very close for you. I imagine your people they must be ride or die. I imagine, like
they are.
Yeah, awesome.
That's the one thing too, is you know, the aftermath of trying to train again, and for anyone, like a male or woman, that's my biggest thing. It's like, you know, sexual assault, sexual abuse it happens to both men and women. And so it's like the aftermath of trying to go train again in a close compact sport was very like hard. And I obviously, like before, when I was younger, I already had some struggles of my own. So I was already familiar with therapy, you know, so it's like I was already doing those things. But, you know, to come back after a while, especially for me, it took me a while to trust another kind of authority figure after what mine had done, you know?
Of course.
It was also so hard because the person who like gave me my blue belt, like I didn't feel like I deserved it, because the person who gave it to me, maybe he was just giving it to me to like try and groom me more. And
no, you're a great competitor, and you were.
This was like, before, you know.
Of course, at the time you had to wrestle with all of this. It's
crazy.
And
at the time, it was crazy. But for any person dealing with that kind of trauma, it's so hard to come back from that. And so it's like you really do have to like find those people who are going to help you now. Like you have to find the community that's going to understand your struggles and understand, no, like this does affect my training and I need you to understand that and I need you to help me that. And you have to advocate for yourself. I used to not advocate as much, but once I started advocating for myself more and like talking about it more, it's helped me train. But yeah, it's like the team I have now is great. It's like obviously the coach that came to replace him.
Right.
He's one of the best I've had. Like he's
you gave him a shout out in the article. Who is that? The new coach?
His name's Mateos. Like I have a few coaches as well that I've had, like Lucas and Small, and then I train my team right now is Soul Fighters. So I train with Tank Mendes or Bruno Mendes and them. But my main coach's name is Mateos. He came to replace the guy. And so it's like having him and having all my other coaches, they help me the most because they understand me sometimes, even when I'm like, I cry very easily, sometimes I cry, but they understand that, they help me mentally as much as they do physically in training. And so for me, that's very important. And, they've helped me believe in myself more, push me more, And so I think for anyone who's struggling and trying to come back in jiu-jitsu, especially after facing like a sexual assault or sexual abuse, you have to find the right kind of gym that's going to support you. And, because if not, then it's only going to hurt you more.
No, thank you for giving that advice, because of course in jiu-jitsu, again, one of the reasons I fell in love with it was you give your body to someone. It's intimate in a different way, not romantic, right? But like the trust it requires to not dislocate someone's elbow or choke you unconscious, like that unspoken trust. And again, like that's what I was speaking to, the positive relationships I got with women, because I was like, man, I got like a real friend here on a different level.
Like I have so many real friends, like the community. Like the biggest thing I love about jiu-jitsu is the community I have in it. And so it's like half of like all of my friends, like a lot of my friends are come from jiu-jitsu and stuff like that. Like it's what I do. So it's like, it's like I love the community aspect of it. Like you said, like all of my best relationships are in jiu-jitsu right now.
Awesome. Well, we honestly covered the big things I wanted to. I wanted to give you an opportunity. Is there anyone other, your gym, obviously, Soul Fighters, right? But is there anyone or anything in particular you'd love to give a shout out to, sponsors, anything, give you an opportunity to say hi or thank you?
Yeah. There's a lot.
Hey, bring it on. Yeah, please.
Yeah. I mean, like, obviously my biggest thank you goes to my parents, especially my dad, because they are like my biggest supporters. Like they support me in everything I do. And, they always support me no matter what, even when I'm like a crazy teenager to them sometimes. But
no, amazing.
But they're my biggest supports. They get, and then obviously having all my coaches and my team like here in Texas support me for everything I do. And then just everybody who supports me, like over the people I don't even know, like it's just insane just to have a lot of love and support. I want, my theory, if I put in a lot of love and support to others, you'll get it back. And so I'm getting it back. And so I'm always grateful for that, to those people. And then of course my sponsor, like Roll Forever, her name's Betty. Like she's supports me in everything I do with like competing wise, and I love her. And so but yeah, and then thank you, like obviously, for all the support. It's been so good to be able to connect with you over everything like that. Like you said, like we share a lot of similarities and just the way we grew up and like some things that happened to us, and so like thank you again, really.
Man, it's so my honor, like my pleasure. And I always feel it's so amazing, like to finally talk to someone that you meet through social media, but like again, like it's so weird with the age difference and stuff, but I really mean this, like for real, sincerely, like I've learned from you. Like I have learned from you over the last year, and I've been inspired by you. Like, so like it's like in very, very much my honor. And like, you're such a great example of like, these horrible things happen in life and I hate it. And it makes me terrified. I have a teenage daughter. I have a little boy. I'm so scared more now than ever, but you're such a great example of how somebody can turn a negative into a positive, be resilient. and you didn't let it take anything from you, right? But you're also brave enough to share like the ugly stuff too, you know, the struggle. And so Mandy, like, you're amazing. Like, thank you for being you and sharing. Oh, let me ask this too. Do you have two things? Anything coming up from competitive perspective I can watch out for? And also, what's the best place people can reach out to you at if they just want to reach out, send you love, whatever that may be?
Okay. Yeah. So right now, the first one coming up, I'm doing no-gi pants.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, so that'll be fun because it's here in Texas where I live, so that'll be cool. That's my first major at Purple, so see how it goes. But yeah, that's what I have coming up. And then also, yeah, I think that's the big one, the major one. Is
yeah, cool.
Right now,
I love that your game is so versatile, gi no gi too. Like, that's pretty cool. Like, you know, like, well, it's definitely cool, but like, you've been successful in both. I mean, that obviously a testament to your work ethic, but coaching, like, great coaching.
Yeah, it is. No, it is. I have great coaching. I have a great team. But yeah, you know, it's what I love, is what I do. So I'm just gonna put all of my passion into it and everything like that, and try my best to, you know, be the best I can.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, it's definitely I'm gonna get there, you know, I'm getting there.
Yeah, no, I can't wait to watch. I'll be on the lookout. I'll be supporting you too, of course. And then where can people reach you if they have inquiries, want to send you love, anything like that?
Yeah, my best one is my Instagram. It's Mandy N Schneider. So yeah, that'll be the best spot to reach me. That's really the only social media that I use.
Okay, gotcha. Well, I'm glad I caught you there then. I was lucky.
Yeah.
My first try. Perfect. And I'll link that for everyone too.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. Again, totally my honor. My honor. Thank you so much.
My honor as well. Really.
Again, True Story with John Gibson. Today's episode was with Mandy Schneider. Mandy, thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you for having me.